Mr. Dato Seri, Mustapha, Mohamad, let me begin with you, because Malaysia has made incredible progress over the past 5 decades to become one of the rapidly industrialized economies of Southeast Asia, but you have also had your fair share of problems. Growth projections this year were downgraded, suggesting that Malaysia could be vulnerable to perhaps some sort of downturn like other economies in Asia right now. How are you going to boost trade and get investment going again in an environment that is very tough?
Thank you, Maryam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, yes, of course, in terms of growth this year, there's a slight, very small moderation. Next year is going to be more than 5%, 4.5 to 5%. That's our expectation for the whole of 2013. We are on track. As long as we get plus or minus 5, we should be okay. Having said that, of course, in the 80s, we did between 1987 to 1997, those 10 years, we did an average of 9.5%. So what we're experiencing now, of course, is lower than what the growth track record in the late 80s and early 1990s. This year, trade has come down quite a bit. We expect total trade to be around 3%. Investments, fortunately, have been on the uptrend. Malaysia continues to be attracting investments, especially from overseas. Looking at the private investment numbers, it's been in double digit for the last 5 quarters, actually. And this year, we think it's going to be somewhere around 16-17% private investment growth. So on trade, consistent with what's happening throughout the world, there's a slight moderation, but investments, we've been doing extremely well, I must say. And this has been a factor which has resulted in Malaysia continuing to enjoy fairly good growth. Having said that, we also focused on increasing domestic demand, taking into account the adverse international economic environment. Malaysia being a trade-dependent economy, domestic source of growth, not only investment, but also consumption. These have been very important in terms of sustaining the momentum of growth. In the longer term, we hope to be able to make 5 to 6%, and if we are on track, on average 5 to 6, then we can be a developed nation by the year 2020. So that's where we are at this point of time. We have been able to survive the previous crisis 2007, 2008, and we have recovered. And next year, we hope to be able to experience a slight increase in growth, somewhere above 5%, 2014.
All right, so Kamal bin Ahmed, Bahrain does have one of the most diversified economies in the Middle East, but you too have faced a number of challenges. Moody's Investor Service lowered Bahrain's sovereign rating by 1 notch, citing the erosion of investor confidence because of political and social tensions and because of a significant dependence still, despite that diversification, a significant dependence on oil revenue. How difficult is it going to be to boost growth in the next few years?
Well, I think the main objective of all government is to ensure that the economy can generate sustained and inclusive growth. For us in Bahrain, during the past decade, we can consider the past decade as the decade of success. Our economy expanded by 70%, our non-oil exports doubled, our unemployment below 4%. So we have achieved a lot during the past decade. But of course, countries are going through different challenges, and of course, we have to continue our reform to address all these challenges. But what is more important, as I said, growth has to be sustainable and inclusive. And for that, government's role is to act as a partner and a facilitator to enable the private sector led growth. We see the private sector is the engine of growth for us in Bahrain, and for that, our task in the government is to take the necessary policies and steps to allow them to do what they do best. And these will cover both domestic policies as well as international policies. When we talk about domestic policies, we think Bahrain has all the fundamentals to enable growth. business environment, will advance business environment with sound legal and regulatory framework, the necessary infrastructure, both physical as well as social infrastructure, is well developed, but doesn't mean that we have to stop. We have a lot of challenges to improve it and make it better. And what is more important than all these things is investing in our people, in our education, and making sure that they have the skill and knowledge to compete at a global level. Also, government, in order to stimulate and enable growth, sometimes needs to provide technical and financial support where appropriate, such as research and even directly, sometimes direct support. But what's more important when we talk about policies, all government are talking about the same policies and about the same subject, business environment, infrastructure, but at the end of the day, we end up with problems. I think what's more important is implementation. And for us in Bahrain, we are making sure that when we set and develop policies, we make sure that it's being done in consultation with the necessary people, with the private sector, with the community, to make sure that we listen to them and we address all their issues. And also, in governments, most departments, they work in silos. And we end up with different policies opposing each other. And for us in Bahrain, we have made sure that we align everybody to make sure that we have set a strategic vision so that all government entities work together and to achieve one common objective. So countries are going through different stage of development. I think in my country, mainly we are playing the role of facilitator and partner with the private sector, but of course, countries at different stage of development. Developing countries are different than developing country, and therefore the government involvement in shaping the economy will vary. Even within a country, from sector to sector, the government involvement will vary. In a new sector, the case will be completely different than a mature sector. In addition to the domestic policies, I think also government has to give enough attention to the international policies. Today, country cannot work in isolation. We have to work with other governments and with even blocks, with other economic blocks, to facilitate supportive environment when it comes to freedom of investment. Trade and investment across the border is something essential today for everybody to grow. I think by working together and ensuring integration, this will benefit all by making sure that the growth is also inclusive between the countries and not only within the country. So I am confident and optimistic about Bahraini future. We have a clear vision. We have the right foundation when it comes to business environments, infrastructures. We are an important market. We are in the GCC. GCC is $1.5 trillion market, and it's growing. And I think growth today, we see growth in China, in India, in Middle East, and I think Bahrain is uniquely positioned to help international companies who want to expand and access new markets to use Bahrain as the base for them and the gateway to the Gulf.
Ibrahim, Saif, Jordan's economy has been hit by a number of external shocks, and I suppose the most recent one that is very difficult to ignore is that the country has been hard hit by the cost of roughly 500,000 refugees fleeing the civil war in Syria. That's further squeezed the economy after a financial crisis last year. How do you boost investor confidence in Jordan's economy?
Thank you. That's a real challenge. But before we get into this, basically spillover that comes to Jordan as a result of this, the overall regional environment is not favorable for investment, and it's not really helping us creating the conducive business environment that we are trying to build in order to be able to attract both private sector inside the country or outside. To the contrary, there is a reluctance to engage in a new venture as a result of this turbulent regional crisis. However, there is some basic, or the pillars of and the soundness of the macroeconomic indicators should be maintained and must not be should not be compromised in order to deal with kind of short-term crises or implications that it's happening. And for that matter, what we're doing is that while we're dealing with the regional crisis. In fact, we are adhering to an adjustment program. We are adhering to an economic adjustment program along with international organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and for that matter, the EU. This program, the pillars, is that reform to deal with some of the existing distortions that we're admitting that we do have, but more importantly is to regain the stability and to maintain the stability of the economy and the soundness of the macro indicators in terms of the balance of payments, in terms of the international reserve, in terms of the stability of the currency, and also at the same time trying also to promote the kind of investment laws and regulations and legislation that are necessary to attract investment. For that matter, we are actually pushing what I would say a very progressive investment law. We are about to also adopt a private-public partnership law, which would enable actually the private sector to engage in infrastructure and in utilities and areas that are sort of, until now, we don't see enough private sector engagement in. And we're not compromising the short or the overall stability of the economy for the sake of handling and dealing with the crisis. Now the challenge is that also if you to stabilize the budget and stabilize the macro indicators, you have to take some tough measures in terms of public spending, in terms of restructuring subsidies and other areas. At the same time, there is this sentiment within the society and high expectations within the society that you have also to manage. So in order actually to do that, also the government is really is adopting, I would say, an investment program where we also want to deal with the regional imbalances within the country by promoting the capital investment and adhering to and advancing in project in terms of the capital expenditures and curtailing the unnecessary current expenditures. So just to summarize it, we are trying to sustain the overall stability. We are to be anti-cyclical in terms of the capital expenditures that we are promoting and spending by focusing on strategic sectors, by focusing on areas that we believe Jordan has a niche in, like health tourism, in the ICT, in delivering services to the region. And also Jordan is preparing itself to take advantage of the fact that it could be a gateway to the Iraqi market, could be a gateway to the post-conflict Syria and other areas, building on the existing well-advanced infrastructure and human capital that exists in Jordan. But we want also to have the right also business environment in place so we can take advantage of this. And the challenge is how you really can turn these crises that are really hitting the region now, but into opportunities in the future.
Lord Green, the shock of the financial crisis raised big concerns about British competitiveness, and we heard from politicians making grand pledges about building a new economic model, but the financial and services sectors are still driving much of the growth in this country. Has anything really changed?
I think a great deal has changed, but you're right that we do believe that we have to rebalance this economy, get a broader base of growth. In the run-up to the financial and economic crisis, this economy became too dependent on financial services and construction and real estate, and we knew that we had to move away from that because that's not a sustainable growth model. What you've seen in recent years is in fact something of a rebalancing, and indeed recent growth, which has been encouraging, has shown demand from a variety of different sectors playing a more balanced role in that story. But we've got a long way to go, and we think that there are three key pillars to any sustainable strategy for the British economy. The first is deficit reduction. This government took office in May of 2010, and it's important, I think, for us as the British to remind ourselves that at that point we had a fiscal deficit larger than that of Greece, and a level of private debt per head that was the highest of any of the developed economies. This was plainly not sustainable. Since then, you have seen private debt per head coming down, you have seen the fiscal deficit coming down, and the government is committed to a continuing progress on that front to the point where we get the fiscal position in balance. That will take a few more years yet, but the direction of travel is very clear. And then secondly, a government that's committed to supply-side reform, which encourages more investment and more flexibility in the economy, because that way lies sustainable growth. And so we've invested a lot of effort in ensuring that we have a regulatory environment which is not overly intrusive from the point of view of doing business, particularly for small businesses starting up, trying to create a business that creates jobs. We've ensured that there's a tax environment which facilitates business development, is business friendly, both in terms of corporate tax rates as well as in terms of research and development tax credits, taxation of revenue due to intellectual property, and so forth. We've introduced what we've called an industrial strategy, which is a series of sectoral approaches where the government works closely together with the private sector business leaders to understand what it is that the sector needs over the long term in terms of investment, particularly in research and development and in the skills base. And indeed, more generally, we've paid a lot of attention to the skills base because, and I think this is a theme that all of us would echo, in all of our economies, whatever the particular stage of development that they are at, is the importance of ensuring a skill base that enables us to create jobs where people can be employed profitably for the 21st century. As what you might describe as an older, maturer, developed economy, Britain has exactly the same need to do that as so many other economies which are classified as emerging. In both cases, we need to ensure that skills are being created within the young people of our society so that jobs can be created that they can profitably occupy on a competitive basis. And then the last point is about trade. In this day and age, no economy can grow on a self-sustaining, inward-looking basis. And we believe very strongly that part of our rebalancing challenge is to ensure that we support as many British companies into the international markets, both as investors and as traders, as possible. First of all, we have a balance of payments and we have to pay our way in the 21st century. But secondly, all of the evidence shows that companies that get into the international markets become more efficient, and the effect isn't just marginal, it's material, and therefore they do better, they grow faster, and above all, they create more jobs. So that's the approach that we're adopting. You challenged me to say what has really changed, and I would say I think a lot has changed. I would end up on a note, though, of saying that financial services remains important in this economy. It remains a world-class capability that this economy has. And since we're sitting in a conference centre in London, I can't but make the point that London is the leading international financial services centre, and it is absolutely a great honour to be hosting WIEF here, and it's a sign of the way in which London can provide a real support to the Islamic finance market in the world at large. Thank you very much.
Mehdi, Jomaa, Tunisia saw one of the first revolts in the Middle East in 2011, and it's been viewed by many as really the only country to have emerged from the uprisings with a relatively peaceful political process. But even that has been difficult, hasn't it? Efforts to forge a new constitution, talks taking place over the last few days, bogged down in bickering between the various groups. Until this is resolved, how difficult is it going to be to get investors interested and excited about the country?
Okay, thank you. I think for investors, they know well Tunisia. You know, we are an open land of investment, foreign investment since 3 decades, I think. And we have more than half of our companies are foreign capital or foreign investment, partly or completely. But in fact, when you see the situation today, there is some expectation because we have the change that you know happening 2 years, more than 2 years ago. This change happened because we had a model of development which reveals that it's not suitable for the country. We realized an average of 4% of growth, but with an unbalanced regional growth. And in the meantime, in Tunisia, we invested a lot in education, and we have a lot of educated people today which are expecting the right level of jobs they are expecting. So today we are in a transition period. And as you said before, speaking about all the actions that we are implementing to ensure and to improve the landscape of investment for the foreign and to strengthen that, we have to check this transition period. As you said, it's causing some trouble, but it's not so violent. Today, we think that we are at the end of this step of the transition. I think that now we are in conclave. I don't know if you say it, conclave. All the landscape, political landscape, are in conclave for 4 weeks, and we hope that within 4 weeks we will get our constitution voted, we will get the dates for elections, we will get the commission who will handle this election, and we will get a new consensus government. I think that's it will be a short story anyhow. 2 or 3 years of transition, it's not so big. What is important for us is the future, and that's why we are really changing many things and implementing many things to ensure a balanced regional growth, but as well to make the evolution that we need to the economy. In the past, we were known like a low-cost country. Now we are looking with the education, with the staff, with the people, the resources, human resources we have, we are looking to a status of a competitive country. So we will invest massively in all the activity, economical activity with high content, with added value, and we have a good position today. We are a part of the Maghreb, we are a part of the Arabic world, we are an integrated part as well of the Islamic world, but we are close to Europe. We are close geographically, we are close as well culturally, and we have educated people which are really easy to navigate in these 2 words. And we think that we are a preferred place as a platform, as a bridge between both. Till now, we have developed more growth and more relationship with Europe. 80% of our trade is made with Europe, and we are looking forward to develop that, but as well, we are looking to diversify, and we think that there is a lot of opportunity. We have some preferred sectors where we have to invest infrastructure, and it will be open to private investment, which is a change compared with the past of Tunisia, to private public partnership as well. And we have many other fields where we have to invest, like energy, like automotive, aerospace, all these high and added value industries, activity of economical activity, and we have the fabric. We have more than 5,500 companies, and all of these companies are working partly for our partner and friendly countries. So we have all the fabric, and we have the intention now to give the dynamism, to give the transparency, and all the leverage that we need to go and to go through what we need today as a growth. We have to go from an average of 4% to 6%. And we saw that in these last 3 years, with what happens in Tunisia and what happened in Europe, which is our first partner with 1% average of growth, we succeeded with a good resilience to realize 3% at the second year of change.
Interesting and not surprising that all of you made comments about the right conditions, the right environment that needs to be in place for businesses to flourish. Mustapha, Mohamad, the last 5 years, Asia has benefited from investors pouring into the region because of lower yields in the West. And recently, some analysts have pointed out that because you didn't have to work hard to attract those inflows, it took the incentive away to maybe cut back on red tape and bureaucracy. How much more, what more needs to be done in the way of structural reform to make sure that you keep getting that capital?
Firstly, we on this panel represent 3 groups of countries, Europe and Middle East and Asia. From Malaysia, of course, we are in the heart of Asia and ASEAN, population of about 610 million people. And we are in this exciting region in the world, which has been growing rapidly in the last 3-4 decades. And we have benefited from this dynamism. China has been growing double-digit in some years, although there's been slight slowing down in recent months. India, there's some hiccups, but in the longer term, these 2 giants in Asia have got a lot of potential, and ASEAN as well. Malaysia is in the center of ASEAN, a very active member of ASEAN. So that's where we are, and we've been connecting with the Arab world, with Europe in trade, and we've been attracting capital as well. We have been reforming. In the case of Malaysia, for example, my Prime Minister made reference to the ease of doing business report released by the World Bank yesterday, where we moved up 6 notches, number 12 last year, number 6 this year. And that's got to do with reforms, cutting red tape, very important agenda of my government, government transformation, the economic transformation, enhancing improving the delivery of government services, and starting a business, construction permits, access to credit, for example, investor protection. These are very important. And in our case, reform and transformation has been very important. Red tape for business, private sector, they want to go to a place where it's easy to start a business, and this is a priority. And of course, it's not only Malaysia that's doing this. Every country on this panel, indeed, every country would want to do that. But the issue is, have you got the will? Have you got the ability to do that? So the world is getting more and more competitive, and Asia has done a lot of reforms. In my case, a lot of reforms have been put in place, and we've been successful. The other phenomenon that we need to be aware of is that some Asian countries are beginning to export capital. I mean, we're not just attracting FDIs, we're beginning to invest abroad. Malaysia and the UK, for example, Malaysia and China. China, we've been informed, is exporting about $100 billion US per annum of capital in the next 5 years. So as much as we want to attract investments, many Asian countries are now exporting capital. And when we export capital, we're looking for the same kind of things that we are doing in the country. We're looking for countries that have reduced red tape, countries where governments are very responsive to private sector requirements. The environment, the investor climate environment indeed is important.
As you say, that the environment is very important. And so let me ask you, Kamal bin Ahmed, about Bahrain's environment right now, because its position was already being challenged to an extent by Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, but analysts say that the political situation has raised questions over Bahrain's future as a regional financial hub, with banks relocating employees and capital elsewhere. How difficult is it going to be to reverse that trend?
Well, first of all, I think competition is good for all. So if our neighbor grow, we will prosper. For example, today, Bahrain, 40% of its export goes to the neighbor countries. So if they expand, this means that we will also expand our protection to them. So I don't think we have an issue with with increasing, because competition will always force you to innovate and to improve your efficiency and productivity. And this is what's happening for the all countries in the region. We are working more and more as one block. We are more integrating to each other, and it's good. And we can see growth happening everywhere. And I don't think we can afford to have one country in the region behind the others. When it comes to Bahrain, I think we have track record and history when it comes to the financial services. It has been tested, the sector has been tested for more than 40 years. We have a well-respected and acknowledged by the private sector central bank. We have invested a lot during the past 4 decades in developing our human resources in the banking industry and especially in Islamic finance industry. And this is why Bahrain today, they have more than 407 financial institutions. We have one of the largest concentration when it comes to Islamic banking. We have international organizations are based in Bahrain like the IOFI, IFA and others. And what we need to do maybe is to do more and better marketing to tell the people about our story.
But there are genuine political problems.
Yeah, okay. I think we have a good story to tell about the political issue we have in Bahrain. I don't think we can deny that there is something that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. Bahrain, just to put you in the context, has started 10 years ago a process, I can call it. We have came up with a radical political reform when you consider the region. And it was a process to institutionalize and lay down the foundation of a progressive democratic process. Today we have all the institutions, we have a parliament that can approve government appointments, budgets. No law can be processed in Bahrain unless they approve it. So we are, in that part of the world, these things are completely different than a mature country or, let's say, advanced country like in Europe. So we have done a lot during the past decades, and we have exposed ourselves as government. In Bahrain, it is easy for anybody to ask to go to protest in the road as long as it's peaceful. So we have exposed ourselves because it's only in Bahrain where people ask and demand and push the government to do better jobs, to deliver their project. And I think it's a process. We all learn from this process. The government is learning to be more efficient, to be more transparent, to be accountable. And also the people of Bahrain are learning how to select their MPs for the first time. So, I mean, we have gone through a lot of achievement during the past decade.
And so I wanted to, Ibrahim, Saif, you were making some interesting comments about a new investment law, a progressive law that you're pushing to try and attract more investment. And there was an interesting, it's an old study, but it's actually very, very good. Interesting Oxford University study released about 2 years ago by Adil Malik and Basim Awadallah. And it said that a singular failure of the Arab world is that it's been unable to develop a private sector that is independent, competitive, and integrated with global markets. Is reform moving fast enough?
I don't think it depends, actually. If you look at all guards, they will tell you that we are proceeding very fast and that reforms are needs to be managed. While probably a more private sector-led mentality will tell you that we're very slow. And I think the challenge is that to address or to acknowledge the fact that there are some existing red tapes, there are some bureaucratic measures, and there are some transaction costs that associated establishing and launching a business. That is the case in Jordan, and as a government, we actually fully aware that there are some measures that really needs to be slashed if we to move fast on that track. However, actually, also we have to be a little bit careful about the context within which we are introducing these reforms. You have a kind of a political, socio-political environment, a regional environment that actually sometimes makes you think twice before taking some of the measures. And here is the history is quite important in dealing with this. There was at some point a wave of the privatization and the deregulating the economies. It was in the world, but it also was manifested in the Middle East when in several Arab countries, including Jordan. Now, unfortunately, the process, by the way with which it was introduced, did not lend itself to move faster now with it, because it was associated with mismanagement, in few cases with corruption, in few cases with lack of institutions, and few cases with lack of sort of, the real engagement of various stakeholders, including the private sector. Or on the other hand, the private sector actually, when we talk about it, I always try to differentiate between a productive, engaging, socially and politically responsible private sector, and what is being also known in the Middle East as the crony capitalist, those who just made their wealth by building some connection, by having some connections with the high-ranking bureaucracy in the Arab countries. And Jordan is not exception in that case. So this is where you go now. Now, at least the talks about mismanagement and corruption is actually nearly mute, at least in Jordan. And it is now the challenge is how can you regain the trust of the public at large in the kind of policies that you are adopting, in the kind of reform and further reform, deep reform measures that you need to take. This is actually very challenging, and this is very important to engage and to adopt a more participatory approach and engaging the private sector in the decision making, and also assuring that there are shared responsibilities at both private and the public sector in that regard. So just to back to the opening remark, whether we are moving fast enough or not, I think it's very important to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. And then actually once you regain some of the public trust in the way you're taking and formulating your policies, then actually you can move faster and faster. But right now you have a kind of cynical, suspicious kind of and sometimes resentment to the kind of policies that you are adopting. But if you just adopt a more participatory, a more open and transparent approach, and establish for some stability in terms of regulations, in terms of also being consistent in the way you're taking decisions, then I think you can get to where you want.
And I'd like to get Mehdi, I will come back to you, Lord Green, but I wanted to get Mehdi Jomaa's response to that. Before we talk about having the right policies, the right conditions in place for these economies to thrive, is it the most obvious problem that's staring you in the face that needs to be resolved first? In Tunisia's case, you have a lot of distrust between the various factions. Is it about the public getting behind your policies, regaining their trust first?
Okay, I think it's important to gain the trust of the public. But anyhow, there is two terms. The immediate term, we need the trust, and we need to give confidence. We need to give visibility. It's important. But in Tunisia, we are looking for the next step, which is a long-term vision. And we need really to implement fundamental reforms to that, to jump, not to jump, but we know and we believe in Tunisia that within the next future we will check this trouble caused by the change, which is normal. And that's a big belief, and what we shown till now, that we are able to do that with a short term. So the most important is to get a right and a good vision, and to analyze the fundamentals of the economy, and to analyze why, with all the advantages we get, with all this high level of resources we got this trouble, and we were not able to offer the sustainable and fair growth to the people. And now we are more focusing in that than checking the daily problems, which are important. And in that it's clear. I think that we can summarize that in few words to forecast. Really, we need a massive investment now to remodel our economy, and I can speak about industry. Today, we have to take advantage of our existing industry to transform it for more integration, more innovation, to invest massively in the infrastructure, and that needs really to improve many things, to improve the fiscality, to improve the transparency, and we are making a big jump, a big step through the transparency, but as well to show and to market all the advantages they are existing. You know, you can invest in Tunisia and you take more, the whole money you earn, even when you are working for the exportation, and it's not well known.
Well, so let me put some of your points to Lord Green, because obviously political risk, turmoil in the Middle East and North Africa, very much a factor in investor calculations, if you like. Mehdi Jomaa was speaking there about the need for massive investment. How have political developments in the Middle East and North Africa perhaps complicated efforts to encourage trade and investment links with the region?
Well, it's obvious that businesses, when they're investing, like predictability, transparency, and a reasonably level playing field. And I think we all have to collectively work to do our best to provide those conditions if we want to have very significant private investment inflows, or indeed sovereign wealth fund inflows, come to that. And indeed, I think this is, obviously there's some specific issues in specific countries, but it's actually quite a general point. What is the job of government? It is to encourage a flow of investment into an economy, because all of us need it. When you read the kind of traditional economics textbooks, they sort of imply that developed economies are the ones that are going to be net capital suppliers to the emerging or developing economies. The truth is, as we all know, more complex than that. And we, the British government, representing a developed economy, nonetheless need to invest substantial amounts in our economy to make sure that it continues to be effective and efficient for the 21st century. And we're very keen to induct foreign direct investment into the British economy. So it doesn't really matter what your starting point is, the conclusion's the same. You need to work on an environment and the environment is characterized by the tax regime, by the regulatory regime, by the way in which courts operate, and therefore the legal system, the reliability of the legal system. All of these things matter. The result, you hope, if you get it right, is that more private sector capital comes in, and it creates the jobs that we know that we all need. I don't think this can be just done by private sector investment. There are sectors of the economy where it's always going to be difficult to induct private sector investment. The basic transport infrastructure is one example. You can do a certain amount of that through public-private partnership techniques, but the truth is probably that in many cases, for example, rail networks need to be financed directly by the public exchequer. And there are, of course, issues like education and the skill base, which also matter to the investment calculations that investors make, whether they're domestic or foreign ones, where, again, government policy in education everywhere, all the way through, from primary through secondary, through colleges of further education to the universities, matters if we're to ensure that we're equipping our young people with what it needs, what it takes to be successful, and therefore being attractive as a country to investment.
And so let me put some of what you say then to Kamal bin Ahmed, because Stephen Green speaking there about what investors look for when they want to do business with a country, when you want those private sector partnerships to perhaps flourish. He said it's about predictability, it's about transparency, stability, having a stable legal framework. You spoke about a number of promising business initiatives that are underway, but is really the first order of business to resolve the political problems?
I think when the investor decision about investing in any country will cover a number of areas. One of them is, of course, the stability of the country, the stability of the economy of the country, as well as the other things what we have discussed earlier, the business environment, the infrastructures, the quality of the people. But I don't think he will concentrate only in one factor, because it's all back to the value proposition of the country. And again, some investments are applicable more in one country, but it doesn't mean it will be applicable in another country. For us in Bahrain, if you are telling me that you are going to invest and create 1,000 jobs, but it is in low-skilled jobs and that will consume a lot of gas and energy and to require a big land in a small island like Bahrain, we'll tell you, thank you, please, you can go somewhere else. So I think countries has their objective, and for us in Bahrain, we want to create good jobs for our people because we are investing and empowering our people with education and knowledge, and therefore we are also looking for the job that you want to have. Today, the economy of Bahrain creating more jobs than what we need, but unfortunately, not necessarily the good that you want. The quality of the job is the problem, and therefore, we need to shift and create more good jobs rather than jobs that rely on maybe the input factor in our country is low, or they can access unskilled, low-wage employees. So this is the challenge that we are facing, and how do we address these issues? By making sure that we create for these industries the necessary human resource, because when it comes to knowledge base, when it comes to high value added industries and services, they always rely on the people. And for us in Bahrain, today we cannot compare ourselves with our neighbors. We don't have high level of indigenous oil and gas so that we can make everything cheap. But we have to rely on the only resource we have, which is the quality of the people we have. So education, again, it comes at the heart of our reform process.
But is there an issue with, because of the developments, political developments, that the violent unrest, is there now an issue with reputational damage?
Okay, first of all, I think Bahrain has gone through a tough time in 2011, but today, if you visit Bahrain or anybody have visited Bahrain recently, you see that everything back to normal. Our economy grow back again. We expect this year to be 5% GDP growth. It's all about the expectation, and I think we are addressing this issue in Bahrain. The people expectation is so high, they expect in our part of the world that the government will give them everything. In a country like Bahrain, where education is free, healthcare is free, people earn less than $3,000 a month, expect to have a free housing or accommodation unit. So the expectation is high, and I think country now, the only approach that they have to adopt with their people is to make sure that they know exactly what is the challenges that we are facing as a government. They have to be part of the decision-making process. They have to be, we should expedite, when you talk about the pace of reform, the inclusion process. They have to be involved in taking the decision. And I think going forward, as I said, I'm again optimistic that we are doing this before the others. We don't have to do it again at later stage. So I am not worried about the political unrest that happened 3 years ago. And the reason that investments are coming to Bahrain. Year by year, the number is increasing. Every day we are opening a new international companies in Bahrain. So the fundamental is there, the story is there, the market next door
is competing with you.
But as I said, it's not a zero-sum game. Yeah. Growth in this country will always enable growth in another country. Well, and again, each maybe country is concentrating in a specific industries and services and have different value propositions.
Well, at this point, it would be good to turn to the floor and get some questions from members of our audience directly to our panelists. So please raise your hands. Yes, there's a gentleman. A few hands are going up, but do we have a microphone over there? Please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question to the panel, I'm Dr. Ghazali from Malaysia. 3 of you are from the Middle East. There is a study called the Arab World Unbound, and your region is the 9th largest economy. You have a market outreach of 350 million. Today, Mr. Stephen Green, you know, free capitalism has introduced some problems, so much your country. We also have state capitalism, and we also have that little problem today. Now, the question to the August panel is that whether Middle East will adopt a hybrid of state capitalism with free capitalism in order to generate the economic potential of your country. Because you are a paradox region. You have sovereign funds invested in all over the country except your region. So my question to learned ministers, when will the Middle East come for an economic borderless world so you can solve the problem which is within your grasp? Thank you very much.
All right, so Ibrahim, Saif, why don't we get your response to that? A good point there about, huh?
Because the question is easy, you turn it?
Well, no, well, I mean,
Well, I can add to the predicament that the Middle East facing if just I have to mention how many jobs that the Arab economies actually has to create in the next 10 years or so, which is about 100 million. And if I to add also the unemployment amongst youth is one of the highest in the world, and the female participation in the labor market is the lowest. So actually these facts are well established in the minds of the decision makers and in the minds of the intellectuals and the fact that is that clearly and one of the issues that we can, and I thought this panel should also focus on what kind of regional initiative and regional integration project we can consider. But we have to have actually also to have a fresh look into how can we increase the level of integration by building not on the traditional way of promoting regional integration, but by advocating, by promoting new initiatives that are mutually beneficial for the countries, that increase the level of interdependence within the region, and by also considering seriously how can we facilitate labor mobility and capital mobility in the region. One of the things that we're taking back is that there are issues related to the politics within the region. The region is highly penetrated in terms, by the superpower, if you want to call it, but also the homework at national level is not actually fulfilled. Just to quote on that, predictability, uncertainty is high, predictability is low, and there are some political issue that is really making it extremely difficult to think outside the boundaries. Well, speaking of Bahrain or Jordan for that matter, or Tunisia actually, it coincides that the three countries are small countries. So there are that limits, there are definitely limits as to how much you can expand. Bahrain is thinking gateway to the Gulf market. We're thinking of ourselves as a gateway to the Iraqi and probably to the Syrian and other markets and to the Gulf market. And I think in Tunisia also they see that their exit or expansion in the European market or the rest of North African countries.
All right, so Ibrahim, Saif, we want to take, just because we're running out of time and we want to take as many questions as we can, but we have a limited number of microphones, so I am sort of going to where the microphones are, but we do have a question over there. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Moin Yassin from Global Vision 2000. It's linked to the first session in the morning. I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan mentioned the Muslim population of the world is 23% and the GDP gross is 6%. Now, my point is this. I think we need a new champion on the platform, and I want the panel to, react to it, namely a new business paradigm. Islamic finance, which is a theme running today, is about building a socially productive economy, not a casino speculative economy. If we take that as a premise, I want to suggest we need massive job creation. Otherwise, this turbulence, as many other academics talk about, is not going to go east or west. So my point is this, a practical suggestion is we need to marry lock in, as opposed to the silo mentality of equity finance with entrepreneurship and SMEs with a multi-stakeholder approach. Now that needs a new approach within government and private sector. We need to bring new partnerships together and we need to fund it. Are we doing enough? Also, I'd like to raise that to the panel.
Right,
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So then let me put that to Mehdi Jomaa in that case. We can't put questions to everyone on the panel just because we want to take as many as we can. But then, so your thoughts on the need to forge new links, to have public and private sector partnerships. Is there a real commitment to doing that? Because if we don't see some sort of progress, then the recent unrest, the uprisings, surely, well, more such violence will be inevitable.
In fact, it's important for us now for the big investments to go through this frame of private-public partnership because the state does not have no more the ability to get more and more debts. And so we are preparing a framework to allow a good risk share, but a good profitability share. That's in general. And just to see one word about the Islamic financement. In Tunisia, we are paying a big attention to that. As I told you, we are in preparing a plan for a massive investment, and to do that, we will use all the leverages. And the Islamic financement is one of really the leverage that we have to push, and we started already. We have one bank which is working and another it's opening, and we are modifying as well our financial code to allow the direct financing through sukuk and all these kind of financial tools.
All right, let's take another question.
I'm Dr. Asfour, President for the Egyptian Business Women Association. And my question to the panel actually, and I come from Egypt, and we have seen all the uprising coming in the Arab world because of the real, there was economic growth in Egypt, but it was only on paper. What is the real impact on the grassroots people, the real small and medium enterprises, the women, the youth? What are your governments doing actually to be able to emphasize the role of youth and women and small and medium enterprises for economic growth? Because we have seen that if all the tenders given for the big companies, all the investing going for the big projects, then we will be left over with the whole population around on the ground. So it's very important to link up the bottom with up to have a real impact on the people of the Arab world.
Okay, so who would like to take that question? An excellent point there about the sort of factors that spurred the unrest that we saw in 2011, and we still see a difficult situation in Egypt now. You have large sections of the population that are disenfranchised. How important is it to have that bottom-up approach and engagement, as well as the top-down policies? Kamal bin Ahmed?
I think all the issue has been raised is very important issues. The youth participation and to benefit from the economy, women participation. I think now all governments had learned the lesson in the Middle East that it's important to involve the youth in the decision-making process and to make sure that they have the right channel to evolve and to expand their business. And it's the role of the government to encourage private enterprise. Of course, each country has its different tool, whether it is financial support, technical support, and even work with private sector to facilitate employment for their youth. When it comes to women, I am proud to say that in Bahrain, women, we see them everywhere. Actually, in my organization, I have more women than men, and they are all in senior position. But again, I know that in other parts of the world, we need to enable the women to take its leadership role in building their countries and their companies. I don't think anybody is underestimating the impact of having an inclusive economic growth, because just economic growth for the sake of having high GDP, 6 or 7, obviously didn't address our issues, and therefore we need to make sure that growth benefits all. And back to the point raised earlier, I think not only within country we need inclusive growth, even between the countries. I think if we enhance the international integration and countries work with each other like in Islamic finance, this will enable inclusive growth even between the countries. So I think inclusive is applicable within and even between countries.
All right, so we have another question.
My name is Shadi Bushra, I'm with Reuters. This is mostly for Mr. bin Ahmed. I was wondering if, and this is assuming that the British government's plans to issue a Sukuk bond go through, I was wondering if you are concerned that Bahrain would lose some of its prominence in the Islamic investment industry simply because Islamic investors would now have an option that is perceived as more stable and less risky for them to put their money in a Sharia-compliant bond?
Not at all. We have so many of them, and actually, it is very important for us to have, I mean, it is great news to know that London wants to be an Islamic hub or Islamic finance hub in Europe, because for sure this will move the industry, the Islamic finance industry, from being regional and concentrating in the Middle East today and in South Asia to make it an international and a global industry. And this will definitely benefit all institutions that we have in Bahrain and even in the region, because the growth here will rely also on an organization and firms who has already, and let's say, they have done a lot of this transaction in our region, and it will benefit all at the end of the day. And again, this is related to the international integration. Having a growth in London will benefit definitely Islamic banking institution in our countries.
There's a gentleman over here. You don't have a microphone, so you'll have to speak up so that everyone in the go ahead.
Hello there. My name is Ranjiv Gunawardhan, the chairman of International Consultants. My observation is that this is about framework of growth, and we are not relying upon government. One of my subsidiaries, we are actually acting like the UKTI. We are actually taking UK companies to the Middle East and hosting major events like exhibitions, things of that nature. So we as entrepreneurs are actually going out there where the growth is and following the opportunities. And I just want to know, there should be more people like myself leading from the front. And we've managed to do that quite successfully in Oman, and we'll be taking UK products and services into different parts of the GCC area. My observation is that more private entrepreneurs need to do things rather than wait for government to come up with new ideas and new policies.
Who would you put that question to?
No, it's just an observation that
okay.
People need to rely upon themselves rather than government.
Okay, so let's take another question.
Hi, my name is Madeline White. I'm a capacity building specialist with education technology and gender focus. My question slightly touches upon another question this lady asked earlier, but I would really love an answer to do with action, specific actions. It's clear from the statement both this morning and now that harnessing the power of globalization is seen as a key driver to national growth, and for our minister from Iraq, also healing national wounds. However, to action this successfully, a national identity needs to translate into a puzzle piece that successfully answers global need. This requires full engagement of citizens, a thriving local human economy, able to translate their skills and ideas to serve local, global and national need. Under two stated headlines today, growth driven by women's economic empowerment, education and skills building, what particular concepts and actions will you take with you from even what you've heard today from your fellow ministers and royal personages here that support the human economy in your countries? So what specific actions? I would absolutely love to hear even just a one-line answer from each of you.
All right, so yes, concrete action, how can the government in your country, Kamal bin Ahmed, go?
You mean initiative?
How can you go one step further?
I can just give you one example. Government take fees for work permit for expats. In Bahrain, this money or this fund used to go to the government treasury, to the Ministry of Finance. Today in Bahrain, this fund is run and managed by the private sector, and they use it to train and increase the productivity of their companies. We have spent 166 million dinar, which is, I don't know, $800 million or something, during the past 3 years, and training 100,000 Bahraini, either directly by direct education and training, or financing a private entity to increase their productivities.
All right, education and getting the private sector involved.
And they manage this.
Ibrahim Saif.
Reflecting on this question, it's about lack of trickle down and lack of this inclusive growth model. I think the issue of being excluded in the past decade or two is what either it was geographical, or it was sectoral, or it was gender-based actually. So in order to deal with this, you have to address this issue. focus more on geographic areas where there was lack of investment. And this is actually, at least in the case of Jordan, we are dedicating a capital investment project, building a well-developed infrastructure at the governance level away from the big, traditionally, centers that used to attract investment. On the sectoral issue, agricultural and traditional manufacturing was also sector that lacks incentives and lack financial resources. This is where we're extending incredible lines to address challenges within this sector and also promoting entrepreneurship within these sectors. Gender or age groups, that's youth or female actually, again, these are areas where you have an educated people, but you lack access, lack opportunities to the labor market. So what we're doing, empowering them, capacity building, and again, promoting an SME, a huge SME program in order to, overcome the issue of traditional accessing commercial banks with all what it comes, including providing some Islamic tools for the SMEs.
I'm going to cut in there just because we are running out of time, and there are some people who've been waiting to ask their questions. They've been very patient. I will come to. I promise I'm not ignoring you. I will come to you, but the gentleman at the back, and then the gentleman who's been waiting very patiently.
My question is to Lord Green. You laid emphasis on education and skills development, and in the plenary this morning also, there was a lot of emphasis on this. But my focus is, what about physically challenged persons? According to the World Bank, the Asia-Pacific region has 800 million people who are physically challenged. In the Islamic world, it would be as high as 250 million people. So how do you bring these people into the workforce? How is Britain doing it? And how can Britain help the OIC countries in this field? If London is to be the financial hub of the Islamic finance, why can't London help us in this regard? Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Go for it.
It is. Because this is part of a wider theme that's actually been running through several of the questions one way or another, which is about inclusive social and economic development. None of us should be able to rest and feel complacent until we've got, and maybe we never will finally arrive at, an economy and a society which enables all people to fill their creative potential. We've talked a lot about youth, and one of the most obvious points is the need for youth skilling and youth opportunities for employment. We all know that it's not merely socially dangerous, but tragically wasteful, that there is so much youth unemployment. We know that. Two questioners now have asked about some of the gender issues, the importance of providing opportunities for women to play their part in the mainstream economy. So that they can be fulfilled in those roles too. And you've just raised another one, which is the importance of ensuring that disabled people, and disablement of course can take many different forms, but are enabled to play their part in a society that is both active and economic. There's no, at the risk of stating the obvious, there's no magic wand over this. This is all a matter of hard work. And what I did want to say to the lady who asked for the one-liner is that I'm always skeptical of one-liners, because this is difficult, detailed, hard work that we all have to keep up over a long period of time.
Sorry to interrupt you. We will get to we've run out of time, but we will get to a couple more questions. But just to follow up on that, why is more not being done? Is this something that is even on the government's radar?
Well, as far as the British economy is concerned, there are a whole series of programs for disability support, and a number of the larger companies provide special programs for disability support, and I don't doubt that there's some experience to share coming out of this economy with other societies. But I don't want to leave the impression that that means we've got it all right and we've got all of the lessons, because no, I think this is probably a collective learning experience. And again, if I can beg my
it's
another 30 seconds.
It's not translating to more people into the workforce.
The gentleman who said that it's not all about only about government, that they're about the things that entrepreneurs and businesses can do to help other businesses is spot on. What we know, you know both that government has an absolutely necessary role to play, and also that however good the government is, it will not be sufficient, that the business community and society more generally have got to work away at these issues too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's about taking a proactive approach and that sense of social responsibility. And there's the gentleman who's been waiting very patiently. Yes.
Martin Barrow of the Jardine Masson Group. I was going to put my question to Dato Sri Mustapha, but he's left us. I'll probably direct it to Lord Green instead, which is about, he talked about the necessary removal of red tape. Lord Green mentioned it earlier about deregulation, and indeed this morning the British Prime Minister talked about, for every new regulation, getting rid of 2 old ones. That's good. But I do think the question is, how detailed are the regulations? If the new one is 500 pages and we get rid of 2 one-page ones, we've actually gone backwards. So what more can we all do together, that's the UK and all the other countries represented here, can there be more teamwork in terms of working on deregulation and anti-red tape campaigns? Let's work together on it.
Couldn't agree with you more, Martin.
That's the short answer.
I mean, that's the short answer. The slightly longer answer, but only slightly, is that this is an issue that's going to be with us for the rest of all of our careers. Regulation is a feature of modern life, and we should be careful not to assume that regulation is automatically a bad thing, of course. We know perfectly well that you can't have an organized, orchestrated way of doing things unless there's a fair amount of regulation. But there will always be a tendency for it to proliferate, to become unnecessarily detailed, and therefore there's a continuing task which is the responsibility of government. It is clearly one that they can only carry out in close dialogue with business, large, medium, small, to ensure that regulation isn't unnecessary, isn't inefficient, doesn't impose unnecessary costs. If we sit here in 10 years' time, as I hope we will, I am quite sure that somebody will be asking the same question, and somebody like me will be giving a roughly similar answer. We have to work at this.
All right. Well, and there we must conclude the panel. My apologies to anyone else who would have had questions, but I have been told to try and stick to time as much as possible. So you're being very persistent. Okay, a very quick one.
Thank you very much. Moi, je suis le ministre chargé des investissements et des partenariats au Sénégal. Alors moi, je voudrais poser une question fondamentale parce que j'ai pu voir que la croissance a suscité beaucoup de débats dans le monde. Et je pense que l'équation macroéconomique de la croissance, tous les pays ont les mêmes standards macroéconomiques et les mêmes fondamentaux. Vous savez, chaque pays a une balance commerciale, a une balance de base et une balance des transferts. Et donc, la croissance peut émaner de n'importe quel indicateur. Si c'est par la balance commerciale, c'est l'offre de production. Si c'est la balance de base, c'est les investissements directs étrangers et nationaux. Et là, il faut régler le problème de l'environnement des affaires pour booster l'investissement. Si c'est la balance maintenant des transferts, c'est les transferts unilatéraux, les dons, les legs, les subventions et le revenu des émigrés, certainement s'il s'agit de l'Afrique. Et là, il faut les virer dans les secteurs porteurs de croissance. Donc, on ne peut pas se baser uniquement sur l'environnement des affaires pour justifier la croissance. Même le G de l'équation Y est égal à revenu plus consommation, plus investissement, plus le solde de la balance commerciale. Ce G-là peut justifier la croissance dans la mesure où c'est les dépenses publiques. Et quand on parle de la croissance keynésienne, c'est les dépenses publiques. On peut investir dans l'école, dans la santé, dans le transport. Si on a ces indicateurs de proximité, on peut régler le problème de la croissance qu'on appelle la croissance keynésienne. Et donc, Doing Business, c'est vrai, est une agence fondamentale de référence, bon, pour faire venir les investisseurs.
Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but could you just get very quickly to the question because we've run out of time, and just tell us who it's directed to on the panel, just to, very quickly.
Okay. Et donc, ce que je voulais dire tout simplement est que l'investissement direct étranger n'est pas la seule source de croissance. Il y en a d'autres sources, il faut visiter les agrégats macroéconomiques. Voilà ce que je voulais dire.
All right, so who'd like to take that, Mehdi?
Je pense que c'est plus une affirmation qu'une question. Mais je pense qu'on est d'accord en fait. Hein, c'est une source importante, l'investissement étranger, mais il n'y a pas que cette source-là. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à cette information par une autre, mais je préfère en rester là.
Excellent, short and sweet, and there you go. Thank you so much to our panelists for being frank and for sharing their insight. So please do put your hands together for Kamal bin Ahmed, Ibrahim Saif, Lord Green and Mehdi Jomaa. Thank you.